Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to the next almost famous sideshow known as Bigfoot Geography, where the gang down at KOR Live symbolically travels the world in search of the elusive Bigfoot and the phenomenon associated with it, but also giving y'all a look geographically at the different regions of this world and all that it might have to offer in challenges and in triumphs related to this subject. My name is Jaster Layenwin. I'm your host, and joining me with me tonight, forever and always on the Bigfoot content, Kazari Iwakura. How are you doing, bud?
I'm hanging in there. I've been tearing up my lower extremities lately.
Jesus, I'm sorry.
I have slammed 2 different toes. I have scuffed a knee, and I've stepped on a nail.
I didn't know we had all. Wait, I didn't know we had that below deck.
Neither did I, but I found it.
Damn. So we're coming to y'all live from Portlock, Alaska. We done set up the boat up on the shore up here so we can give y'all a 3-part Bigfoot related series here. But we're going much further than that. Once we're done with Alaska, we want to take this Bigfoot geography thing just a step further and start exploring different parts of both the United States and the world abroad to kind of get everybody's minds wrapped around the whole Bigfoot phenomenon from a different angle. As we were talking about it a little bit a while ago, that a lot of people just don't understand the kind of terrain and the kind of areas in which these sightings and these things occur, and what all that might kind of challenges that bring to Bigfoot researchers, forest park employees, search and rescue teams, all of that. You know what I mean? Like, there's plenty going on out here in the U.S. that ain't easy walking. So we kind of want to get that going. We want to try and help understand a little bit better about not just the geography but the ecosystems associated with those areas of the world in which we're talking about, to kind of give us our kind of take and kind of delve a little bit deeper into the topic. And with that, we're going to start off with our first...
But hang on, there's one more thing we do have to say before we do get looking into our sightings and talking about the region we're exploring today. We've done a little bit of deliberation, and we have decided that we are going to be splitting Core Live into 2 channels from now on. This is something we've done after carefully looking at our audience metrics and stuff like that, and it was a decision that we did not make easily. We took a lot of time to think about it and talk about it. So, for those of you who listen to come to us for cryptid news, the good news is you don't have to go anywhere. This YouTube channel, or the Spotify, is going to stay the after hours channel, basically, because that's what does best over here. Meanwhile, we're going to be moving our gaming stuff over to another channel where we're going to be introducing a couple more shows to round out that programming block. What does that mean for you as a listener? Well, you get more Core Live, and we're going to be putting in a bit more effort into other stuff, so we're going to have some visual content as well. Ooh.
Right. And it's going to be big, it's going to be exciting. So I kind of
I'm a little hesitant. I'm a little anxious. This is new territory for us, and you know me, Jaster. I've always been very cautious with the decisions we've made with the podcast. So we're going to new frontiers that I'm not sure I'm ready for, but we're going to go there regardless. Just like how we're going into the frontier of Alaska. How's that for taking it back around to the subject matter,
Oh,
eh?
yeah, definitely. So, when we're looking
today
at this...
we are talking about... Today, the region of Alaska we're going to be talking about is specifically the big valley of Alaska between the 2 mountain ranges. Because there is the... Well, Jasper, you just did the terrain breakdown, so to me, off camera, so why don't you do it on camera?
Alright, I gotcha. So, the last frontier of North America, right? We're talking about an absolutely ginormous amount of land, alright? This is like the only state that can even come close to Alaska in sheer size is Texas, and that's not that close, okay? So,
No.
Just to let everybody know that, you could literally supplant Alaska, on the western half of the United States, and you're probably still going to get close to the Mississippi River. That's a lot of territory. We're looking at over 660,000 square miles of just government-owned territory. Okay? Ton of land out there. And in order to do this properly, we wanted to break this down into 3 different parts. We're wanting to do the Alaskan interior, which is basically contained by the Brooks Mountain Range to the north and the Alaskan Mountain Range to the south. And we're going to include the Bering Strait National Park as well, which kind of is in the central coastline of Alaska as well. That way we can kind of break up these reports between the north and south a little bit cleaner. But also, just to kind of make this a little bit more tolerable of a search. Because, like, Kaz was just trying to figure, like, he spent a good half hour looking at it, and he's like, man, I'm having a hard time finding something in the right area. And I'm like, exactly. Like, there's a lot going on. So, in order to break all this up, that's the route we're going to take. And now to dive into the actual topic of today's discussion, we're going into the Alaskan interior. Why? Because good goddamn, this is the number 1 spot on this planet I would bet there's Bigfoot. Okay? We're talking about potentially the largest section of unmanned, undocumented wilderness in the United States. Okay? Rivaled only really by Russia and Siberia. Okay? There's not a lot of people out there. There's not a lot of things going on as far as people going out there to shoot stuff or anything like that. And it poses a giant challenge to people who are wanting to go out to Alaska to go and look for Bigfoot, or people in Bigfoot territory like Alaska wanting to go out their backyard and go and looking for it. Okay? Like, as far as all this is concerned, this is like almost an amount of territory that the human mind can't really wrap its brain around. So, yes, while this might be the most likely place to find a Bigfoot, this is going to be one of the hardest places to find a Bigfoot. Just because there's not a lot of people, there's a whole ton of land to go along. So, in order to prepare for this kind of stuff, I went through a bunch of different documentaries, not just Bigfoot or cryptid related ones, but I also went through National Geographic, I went through Animal Planet, all that other kind of good stuff, right? Looking at maps, trying to read all about all this kind of stuff. And what becomes apparent pretty clearly, to me anyway, it took me a long time of digging to really get a whole lot of good content from stuff like National Geographic, Animal Planet on the internet, just because the sheer amount of people that are going out there to shoot, to do all this kind of stuff, are Bigfoot people, which is kind of crazy to me. Like, I was sitting there, I looked up Mount Hayes, Alaska, right?
Yeah.
I got nothing but ancient aliens, bro. No
Yep.
National Geographic. No Animal Planet. Like, it's a weird area to do research because it's one of the only parts of America that has this few people. So,
Yep.
you kind of got to get what you can from what you get. But, thankfully, there is a couple of channels that really do good work out here in Alaska. And one of the ones that I found to be probably the most helpful for finding interviews and finding people's accounts was Small Town Monsters. So, shout out to those guys. They went up there and they've filmed countless hours of interviews, expeditions, all that kind of stuff. But we're going to go into more than what just they found today. So, let me go ahead and slow it down here. So, the other thing I need to talk about here is the lifestyle of the people that live up here is just so different than what we are used to in mainland United States, right? Like, the majority of villages and settlements in Alaska are subsistence villages. Like, we're not talking a place where you got a post office, or try finding a Dollar General in Alaska is a lot harder than you think. That's what I'm trying to say, okay? Getting up there, boats, helicopters, they're your best friend, because there's not a whole lot of paved roads outside of the Alaskan Highway, which kind of ends at Fairbanks. Now, there's a couple other highways, but there's not a whole lot of transportation, especially it's not four-wheel drive, don't go out there with a Prius, I guess. That's what they're trying to tell you. So, with that, I kind of want to bring up one of my favorite YouTube channels because he lives in Fairbanks and works as, I guess, a nurse or something, works in a doctor's office. But his name is Metal Detecting in Alaska. Okay? Now, Kaz, what's your thoughts on the metal detecting in Bigfoot in Alaska? Like, I know there's some of the stuff that we've listened to together that we've really, really been interested by.
Yeah, no, I distinctly remember when we first watched this video, it blew us away because, well, one, it'd been a while since we'd heard a vocalization that clear, and two, there was no way the video could have been staged in any way, shape, or form.
No, like, not good. No, like the situation itself was kind of wild. Like, you want to go into detail, kind of what the video was about, or do you?
So basically, Homeboy is out in the middle of the woods, and he is doing his thing. He's metal detecting. He's looking for, the typical things he's um looking for. Anything from like prior settlers, stuff like that. Just, I mean, because like in Alaska, the odds of finding trash while you're metal detecting are way lower.
Mm-hmm.
So when you because like that is kind of the risk of that you kind of go with when you're out metal detecting is like you are going to find trash, and while admittedly you are looking for trash, you're looking for really old trash, but like most of the stuff you find is going to get you like a couple cents, maybe a buck. You're not going to be finding gold rings, silver spoons, horseshoes, daggers, stuff like that, right? A lot of the times it's nails, it's discarded, it's discarded like buttons or pieces of tools,
Right.
stuff like that, which while on their own they have really cool historical merit, it's not something you really do if you're looking for money.
No, definitely
Because
not.
like the guy who metal detects on the beach, hoping he'll find somebody's lost engagement ring or something, that's the guy who's doing it to get rich quick. Most of the people who are in the hobby do it because they like what they find. Okay, and in this case, I don't exactly remember. I might actually have to pull the video up here, but the basics of it is Homeboy is out in the woods. He says, "Man, it's getting kind of late. I should probably go." And as he's metal detecting, all of a sudden there is a really loud Sasquatch call that stops him dead in his tracks.
Oh yeah, and like we're talking multiple calls, things getting thrown in the water. Like he was kind of near a stream whenever he was. I think he actually found like a ring case or like something where like an engagement ring or a gift ring would be left in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he starts hearing this call, starts hearing a splash like something gets thrown in the water in the river beside him. But the thing that really kind of gets me creeped out is like because he keeps on recording, right?
Yes, yeah, he's still going.
He's still metal detecting. And he's like, okay, it's about time to pull out. And then, like, you keep noticing in the background, those calls keep getting louder.
Yep.
And louder.
And getting closer, too. Yeah.
And, like, they get way close. Like, close enough to where when that thing finally lets out its last scream and it high pitches it, it actually tops out the recording software. It peaks the sound. Which is, like, something I've never heard before. Like,
yeah.
At least in the Bigfoot world. Now, like, at that point, he decided it was time to leave. But at that point, he also had drawn his firearm, right? So, like,
yes.
He was clearly not feeling too hot about what he had heard. And he decided to pull back. But that's not the only thing he's seen. So there's a couple other videos. And this is kind of where I really want to point out the veracity of his claims here. Is that he has seen multiple trailway videos where him and his grandson are out biking in the trails and they had come across footprints. And by God, if they're not the best looking high res video of a Squatch print I have ever seen. Like, there was one I particularly remember that they were going down an old logging road and something had put a big old foot down right there, and they had almost drove over it with the bikes. You know, they almost lost the footprint, but when they seen it, it was so freaking ridiculous because it had sunk damn near 4 inches into the mud. Like, the only other things that were leaving that kind of indentation in the mud were tire tracks or washouts. You know what I mean? And this was clean, plain as day. Like, if they had plaster, that would have been an awesome plaster cast. But what I think was really, really good about this guy's videos was the fact that he really goes out there with a nice camera and he's good at taking videos with it. And, like, you get some really clear video footage of Bigfoot prints. So if you do want to get into whatever he get, like those videos, we'll leave a link in the description to kind of the compilation videos of his Bigfoot stuff. Because, like we said, he does something completely different than this. He's not a Bigfoot channel, but with hundreds of hours recorded out into the wilderness, he's come across some stuff too. So, like, he even was like, okay, let me put all my weird shit in one video, send it on out, you know. So we'll link that in the description below. He's a great channel to listen to.
I'm part of my yawning. I've had a very interesting sleep schedule lately.
I understand that.
Yeah, no, I just pulled up the video with the encounter in question that we're talking about. And for those who want to go look at the individual video instead of his compilation, it's called Bigfoot Screamed at Me While Metal Detecting in Fairbanks, Alaska. The channel itself is called Metal Detecting in Alaska (parentheses KEITHIE6 KEITHIE6), and it starts at about the 5:34 mark. He gets into a little riverbank just like Jaster says, and he finds a ring box, and it's right at about the 5:50 mark that he hears his first call, and he sits there for about another minute and a half, at least in footage. We don't know how long he was actually sitting there, and these calls get more audible and stuff. And yeah, it's pretty interesting, honestly. I don't know, man. Like, I mean, it's obviously not like the kind of stuff like, say,
it's not the Sierra
it's not
Sounds, but like
it's no Sierra Sounds. It's closer to the reservation howls that we like to talk about a lot. The Umatilla howls, yeah. In that it's very distant, but it's very clear and very aggressive. So
I would like to know, for people that do listen in like with nice headphones on and stuff in the video, that you can denote that there are cars in the distance, you know, but like with a good pair of headphones, you can kind of discern that they're not the calls are not coming from the direction of the car sounds. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, definitely not. That's either off to the right or behind him, and he's got those things out in front of him and maybe off to the left. So I'm not convinced that it was some random dude out there trying to mess with him. I feel like that's kind of hard. But with that, let's go ahead and dive into what it's like to be a Bigfoot researcher, okay? Because, like,
yeah,
even on our side, where we're more armchair researchers for the moment, it's not an easy thing, you know, because people want to hear about citable stuff. People want to talk about things that they had seen and everything else like that.
Right. Yeah, no, and I think like, you know, I mean, not to say that there isn't merit in being the armchair researcher. There is, knowing how to look through old news reports and you know, thumb through books and stuff like that, and cite your materials and all that good stuff is good. That's mainly what we do here at Core Live. Is we go reading. We sit here in our armchairs. We pile stuff up and we read.
Right. We try not to put anything on there that people don't put their name on.
Exactly. But I have nothing for respect for anybody who does any form of field research whatsoever, because there's way more involved in that. I mean, obviously there's the travel, but there's also the logistics of it. Bringing out your equipment, sometimes camping, all that stuff. You know, and there are people who get really deep into it. Some of our favorite Bigfoot research groups have created a lot of really interesting techniques for field research. For instance, the ones down in Texas that you like to read about a lot. I remember being deeply fascinated because they have, it's it's like a hunting blind basically, but it's 3 mirrors.
Yeah, right. So that way, it like two of them, maybe even like with just one of them, will actually get the one to start being curious about it, and that allows that third mirror, to actually get the recording software to actually see the Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's a I don't want to say. I mean, saying it's a known problem makes it sound like, well, this is an actual factual problem, because a lot of Bigfoot research goes off a lot of assumptions and hypotheses. But there is a hypothesis that Squatches can see the infrared of cameras, and it's part of why they're so camera shy. And so this mirror blind was made in an attempt to see if they could get more footage of them, and more importantly, get up close and personal for studying purposes. And it's worked because they've had Squatches just tromp through the area and not even realize they were there. Or if they did know they were there, they didn't care. Because I remember they talked about this on their podcast of some encounters they had. I remember one of them saw a white-haired old one with using that blind, and that deeply fascinates me, because hauling mirrors are fucking heavy, y'all.
Right.
And making a construct out of mirrors and then hauling that out into the woods, that's nuts.
Yeah, and recording software.
Let alone all the recording software, sound equipment, campsite stuff, firearms, the whole shebang. Like that, I always tip my hat to field researchers, because they're serious about this stuff, man. I know everybody. I know the stereotype of the Bigfoot researcher is the crazy guy out in the woods, going, oh, I talked to him the other day. I traded fruit with him, because that's what you always see in the movies, right?
Oh, definitely on the news too.
Yeah. But it's like, they're putting the effort into going out there and doing it, which is what I can say. That's more than I can say about a lot of the people who are so eager to disprove it.
Right. They're like, well, how about everybody that hasn't went out there and seen one? I'm like, well, there you go, I guess.
Yeah.
However, there's a couple of investigators up there in Alaska that are willing to put in the hard hours and stuff to go out there, talk to people, go out to the sites of encounters, try to verify what they can. Because BFRO kind of has been out there a little bit. I know the NWAC's been out there, the North American Wood Ape Conservancy.
Who we were just talking about.
And there's probably a little bit more leaning on the shoulders of independent researchers in Alaska than a lot of other states. Just because there's no one out there.
Alaska presents a lot of unique challenges for, a Bigfoot researcher, because you can't just, load the Tahoe up, with everybody and all the gear and take a road trip and then go out there, right? You can only get so far with, land vehicles. I mean, there are a lot of people in Alaska who live very remotely, and if they need to go, air quotes, into town, they get in their plane, or either that, or, they ride, snowmobiles, or ATVs or something for hours and hours on end. Because a lot of these people, they value their privacy, and they value their isolation and stuff like that,
and they value the freedom. I think that's another big thing.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And when they need to go lean on these communities, they have to, the cost that they pay is that they have to go far out, and unfortunately, that creates a situation for your average researcher, where all of a sudden, well, now you're going out into these deep parts that may or may not be untamed wilderness, and just so you can talk to one guy about something he saw out on just a Tuesday.
Oh, I know. So that's something I did put in the notes. So there's a guy we're going to bring up a couple of times. His name's Larry Baxter. It's kind of funny. His nickname is Beans. So Larry Beans Baxter.
Beans the Bigfoot researcher. I love it.
I know. So he's done.
Can we get him tag teaming with Bobo?
Oh my god. That would be hilarious. Like,
That's your new buddy cop show right there, Beans and Bobo.
I would love to see it.
Yeah, I'd watch it.
So this guy's done a lot of interviews and worked with a lot with small town monsters in order to help network and get the interviews and stuff like that for the movies that they do. And this guy goes out and he's saying the exact same thing. He's like, people want you to come out and everything, and it's all well and good and they mean well. He's like, but when you got to deal with requesting on vacation time, going out there and getting the supplies and resources, and then you're talking about a 10-hour one-way trip to go out there and see something that happened 2 weeks ago. It's hard. But to go ahead and kind of pivot, let's go ahead and talk about some of the other roadways in Alaska, because that is kind of the majority of Bigfoot reports are roadside encounters. And there is no bigger highway than the Alaskan Highway, which actually connects mainland Alaska with the mainland United States by way of Yukon and British Columbia. So,
I've always found the roadside encounter to be such a fascinating trope, because something about the unique way that nature intersects with man in the way these encounters tend to happen.
Right,
because I would wager to bet that most of the paths that these creatures follow, existed long before these roads were put here, and to them we're just kind of in the way.
Right.
Because you see that a lot with deer crossings and stuff, right?
Definitely. And
we split up a wilderness, and maybe there's better food on the other side of the road. Now they got to cross it. And, this is that's how you get a 6-point buck through your front window.
Well, talking about Alaska, bro, they got moose and caribou up there and shit. You're upgrading your white-tailed deer quite a few times over. You catching a bull moose in your car.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And you think it's bad when deer slam into your car at several hundred at 100 miles per hour. Wait till you get something the size and weight of your car hitting you with that speed. But we're not talking about running over Sasquatches, even though there is that one clip of that couple who hit one. And the rear view camera video.
That one's kind of wild. That one's kind of a harder one to outright believe, just because I get it. When you slow it down frame by frame, it looks better. But, just the whole idea of it's kind of wild to me. That, you might know what it is, but then at the same time, if you've got a rear view camera on your vehicle and you think you hit something, wouldn't you want to make sure you didn't hit something somewhat important that you might want to call the police about, Yeah. So, all things supposed here, the Alaska Highway is some of the craziest things to be seen about Bigfoot, because if you want to look at the Alaska Highway kind of isolated, all right, instead of just Alaska, if you want to just look at the highway, it is almost one of the biggest hot spots for Bigfoot in the entire North American continent.
If you look at a Bigfoot encounters map, and you go look at the highway,
there's 4 clusters.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Every bit, and that's different towns, and then you've got interspersed between those clusters, you've got more roadside encounters. It's kind of nuts, just the sheer amount of them. Now, we got a couple of reports we want to kind of go into here. Do you want to take one out, or do you got the notes up?
I'm going to need you to pass me the notes, actually.
Okay, I got you. So I'll take the first one. All right, let me throw these over here back at you real quick. And then I'll take the first one, you'll take the second one. Sound good?
Okay, sounds good.
All right, so Actually, no, this might be the only one. So you can take the next part, okay? So this report on the Alaska Highway was one that I kind of found a little more than a little interesting, because not only is it the only verified actual aggressive encounter on the Alaska Highway,
Is it this one I have highlighted right
yes.
now?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Right.
You want to take it?
Yeah. Um. Okay. So the report says that this takes place near the Yukon border. Describes a man who went to urinate outside. Was this after he pulled over?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so he pulled over to take a leak on the side of the road. Um, you know, I'm sure some of us have been there.
Yeah, he was like near an outhouse, but when he walked outside his car, he got this eerie feeling, so he decided to pee by his car instead of by the outhouse. Or in the outhouse.
Boy. Okay.
And then,
so,
yeah.
I'm reading this, so he gets an uneasy feeling, and he looks over at the outhouse and sees a large, hairy, bipedal individual standing behind the outhouse. According to the man, the individual stood an easy 2 feet over the roof. The outhouse, when later measured 8 feet tall. So we've got a 10-footer right here.
Uh-huh.
That's an above average right there. Actually, I think that goes into our big Bigfoot territory, doesn't it? Because above average, that's like
I think
8 or 9 feet, isn't it?
nine's like reaching the average for like most continental United States encounters, from my understanding. No, like yeah, you get big suckers everywhere. However, something also that I want to bring up, kind of in the totality of this Alaska discussion, and later when we get into Canada, these northern reaches of the United States, the boreal zone, tend to have an average higher height and size of Bigfoot encounters compared to everywhere else. Like, we're talking 10 to 12 feet tall almost seems to be an average male Sasquatch in that part of the United States, which I think's nuts. Okay, like,
yeah,
we were talking about the Bergman rule before, which kind of dictates that the higher up you go from the equator or closer to the poles, the bigger stuff tends to get, because the need for heat reservation. So if that's also presently true within the Sasquatch species, that would be nuts too, because we kind of feel like their existence kind of is because of the rule in the first place. But if that's in line with it, not because of it, that's a whole other thing, I feel like.
I also, on the thought of prey, it's probably much more freely available in a territory like the Yukon or, the Alaskan wilderness, because, well, it's wilderness. It's very untouched. If I were Squatched, I'd be in hog heaven up there, dude. You kidding me?
Oh, dude.
There's so much game and natural resources to pull from there. There are plenty of types of berries that grow up there. Obviously, you've got your deer and your moose and your elk. Your bears, your boars, all that kind of stuff.
Salmon.
Salmon. There is plenty of protein around. There are plenty of trees for shelter. Dude, that is the Sasquatch timeshare right there. Are you kidding me?
No, yeah. Like, I was listening to National Geographic, okay, and they were talking about this, like, where the species of bear in this region of the world, you can tell just right off the bat which ones get regular feeding of fish, okay? Because they're like 25% bigger, okay? They're like, they're big, they're mean looking, okay? Like, have you ever seen those big brown bear videos where it basically looks like an Abrams tank, just a big furry tank? Like, that's what they're eating all the time. Because all those fish fats and everything's really good for the body. Now, like, that is another popular theory amongst researchers in the area, especially the coastal researchers, is that these Bigfoot are so big because they readily hunt, they readily fish. Because the bears that do that regularly get bigger than normal. So, like, it almost stands to reason. It would be in line with the ecological rule right there. Now, that's just the highway, right? Like, we've just pointed
Yeah.
out one encounter along this highway, but we got plenty of them if you want to get into it. However, for the sake of brevity here, let's go ahead and get into our next bit, which is Denali State Park, okay? So this is home of Mount McKinley, the largest mountain in North
Well,
America.
now it's called Mount Denali. Now it's been uh, it was called Mount McKinley because a prospector named it, American prospector named it after then incumbent President McKinley. Um, but in 2015 they changed it back to its natural name that it was given by locals.
Okay, that's good.
Uh, yeah, so that yeah, I was doing some reading while we were recording. I was like, oh, tight. So the white man gave something back for once. That doesn't happen often.
Well, we'll get into this in the series. So, like, I kind of feel like, yeah, we took all that shit, but I do really believe that this part of the North American continent has been besieged by bad energy or bad magic or bad medicine, whatever you want to call it, because there's a lot of stories about how whenever the original people came, the white man sailed these areas laying land claims. Like, the natives did not take very kindly to it, and they cursed the land on their way out. And that's why there's Wendigo stories. People believe the Bigfoot is attributed to this in Portlock. So, like, there's a lot going on with that phenomenon and the spiritual side of things and the Native American factor. But let's go ahead and get into something a little bit closer to home, okay? So, Denali National Park, there was one article I want to bring up with the ice pack track line, which is a semi-infamous photo of footprints made by a creature as it strode over a frozen lake. Now, what's weird about these footprints, they don't look like normal footprints, right? Like, normal ones, they sink into the ground, but these are rising up. And, like, this kind of happens on frozen ice whenever there's a lot of wind and everything going on. Whenever you've got something that's applying heat and pressure to it, it'll start to cake up stuff. And that's why you get these rose footprints instead of the sunken ones. Now, that all aside, there is something I do want to kind of get into with Denali State or National Park that might be a little bit of a crazy subject here. So, do you know the story of Chris McCandless?
I don't believe I do. No.
So, there was a whole documentary film and all kinds of stuff about this guy. Missing 411 covered him, all this kind of stuff. Essentially, this man chose to go live in the wilds. Okay, shed all of his like worldly possessions and everything, just go live in the woods, right? Living out the male fantasy, let's be honest. But he ends up getting stranded across this river with only maybe 400 yards up the creek. He would have been able to find another crossing into safety. He just wasn't able to make it. And he lasted a good long while in this abandoned bus. Okay? Now, where this gets weird, because he didn't survive.
Aside from the fact that he's living in an abandoned bus out in the middle of...
Well, he didn't make it. This was definitely like he got lost, he got stranded, he was trying to make it back to... He was in the middle of a snowstorm, I believe, and he was trying to make it back to civilization when the crossing area that he was used to using gave way, and he wasn't able to make it back. So, like, he didn't make it back. So, we don't want to talk bad about someone who had passed. That's not why we're on this conversation here. What I want to bring up is that there are some locals that claim that Chris McCandless visited their cabins, which were kind of close to the area of the bus, and vandalized the shit out of them. Like, beat the roofs in, freaking throwing stuff at it. Like, apparently one of the cabins had its wooden stove, like, you know, the big wrought iron ass stove that they have to heat the whole place, was picked up and thrown like a couple 100 feet outside of the cabin, right? So apparently this man, starving to death, having a hard time of it, went across these cabins, and instead of just breaking into them and using them because they would have been a whole lot more comfortable than a
Yeah.
bus, right?
Yeah.
He goes nuts on these things, smashes them to pieces, and then goes back to his bus and to go live out the rest of his days. That doesn't make no damn sense, right?
Aw.
So there was a Bigfoot researcher by the name of Norm Solly that went out and he was like, okay, this doesn't make sense to me about this because they outwardly vilify Chris McCandless for these vandalisms, okay? But he's like, wait a second, this don't make no damn sense. Like, A, why is a man going to do this? But B, this lines up a whole lot more with vandalism accounts that I get from Bigfoot than people, okay? Like, people would have done something probably a little more damaging, like burning it down or breaking the window. You know what I'm saying? They have a different modus operandi for vandalism.
Yeah.
So he goes out there, and according to him, he is not convinced at all that Chris McCandless was the vandals responsible for these cabins that surrounded the area around the bus, which is, in my opinion, while crazy a thought, I think that is kind of important because, like, the dude did kind of get vilified for that, and it's a very sad story for what had happened. And by all accounts, for people that have lived in the Bigfoot world, at least, like, not the ones that just have the confirmation bias, but people that try to understand a profile whenever they get different encounters, these vandalisms match up with Bigfoot reports.
Yeah, I was thinking about. Hang on, let me plug my headset.
He said technical difficulties.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about. I'm digging up this relic from the past, but a Monster Quest.
Oh,
We're talking
wow.
old school, right?
Some Chris
Okay, so
Highcheck shit, or Doug Highcheck shit. Let's go.
yeah, okay, so there was an episode where I distinctly remember there was a lake cabin that got vandalized, and what had happened inside that cabin was very much in common with what's described here. But what's interesting about this vandalism is that we have footage of the interior after the vandalism because the owner of it went through to document it for insurance purposes, right?
Right.
And I can very clearly imagine the kind of chaos because Bigfoot's like getting into houses and like tossing them is not an alien idea. I would like to refer to the Cowman affidavit.
Yep.
Uh,
I mean, there's piles of
which
reports.
for those who are not familiar, this is a sworn affidavit written by a man called S.D. Baker. It's called the Cowman speech.
Yes.
One of our favorite YouTube channels in the world, Bob Gimlin, did a video about it. I highly recommend either seeking this account out and reading about it, or listening to Bob talk about it. And one of the things that's important is after the main encounter that makes up the story, the family comes back after having abandoned the house to find it having been ransacked. And like the fridge had been opened and food had been tossed everywhere. The TV had been tossed out a window, I think. Like, shit was turned over, the walls and ceiling were torn up. Like, it was, and of course the whole place smelled like shit. And I'm imagining that is very similar to, okay, for obviously, no man nearly frozen to death that's starving is going to be able to, pick up a
whole
wrought
wood
iron
stove.
stove, let alone throw it,
outside the cabin,
Yeah.
and then apparently get on the roof and beat it in to make it look like they were smashing it with boulders.
Yeah.
Like, no way. Like, I'm saying that's wild. Like, no one in a survival situation is going to do that. Like, they're going to break the door down, maybe, throw some frustration at
Yeah,
it.
no,
but
if you're in a survival situation, wasting that much energy on just trashing something that could, save your life makes zero sense. And I mean, I get it. There is delirium that does happen from being out in the woods. People will make strange, confused choices when they are panicking, stuff like that. But like, it's still shelter. you know?
Exactly. And like we actually did pull this from a small town monsters interview. So like I said, once again, big shout out to these guys because like we wouldn't have even got the account from Norm Solly if it wasn't for these guys. And if you want to listen to his report, you can get it from Tales from Alaska's Interior, Bigfoot Beyond the Trail, which is a really good thing. Anybody that wants to listen to some long form Bigfoot stuff, that is some good shit. Okay, I was listening to that a good bit on my way to doing this. So, if we haven't done it already, Kaz, let's get bizarre. As
Okay.
what's his name would say. I don't know. I love his show too. So, Bigfoot isn't the only controversial topic in Alaska, bro. Okay, so like we can hit this up a couple times in our little three-parter, but the Alaska Triangle basically sits over the entire of the Alaska interior. Okay, and like how much do you know about the Alaska interior? Or not the Alaska interior, but
you've brought up the Alaskan Triangle to me before
yes.
while we were doing research and talking about Squatch offhandedly. I don't think we've ever had an in-depth discussion about it.
All right, so it is the one place I can't remember if it's per capita or how they measure it, but Alaska Triangle has some of the most missing people of all of the weird triangle shaped places. You know what I mean? Bermuda Triangle, whatever. So this ain't the only thing though. Like there's UFO reports out the butt cheeks. Okay, Alaska has the most UFO reports for having the least amount of people in it. Okay, like there are military bases strewn all over that area. There are reports from military personnel about military bases that are being used for all kinds of different purposes and stuff like that. A lot of them probably being established during the Cold War and used for either espionage or reconnaissance or at least having a token force out in the area. However, one thing that I do want to say kind of got me all freaked out was that there's a mysterious black pyramid in one of the valleys in the mountain ranges in the Alaska interior. So,
do we have photographs of this? Is this for real or is this just
no,
legend?
this is some real deal shit, bro. You can like people got it on Google Maps for a while and everything. Give me a second.
Alaskan Black Pyramid. I'm sorry, it's just you make a claim like that, and that's I see a rock formation that looks like a pyramid.
So,
Um,
thing about that rock formation is that it's a perfect pyramid shape. Okay, and not only that, like I believe they've went into.
this is I'm sending a picture of it right now. Is this the one
No,
right here?
no. I'm talking about this one, bro. Nope, that's not it.
That's not it either.
No, this is it. This thing's way out in the middle of, I believe, the Brooks Range. I can't remember where exactly. Give me a second. But this is a place where apparently people have been taken to as like a military base of some kind, whatever.
I'm a little skeptical of this because I'm not finding any like. If this was as a geographic location, I feel like there would be a little bit more on this outside of just some, woo sites. Oh
No,
wait,
yeah.
nope. Hold on. Oh wait, no. This is a Smithsonian article about something about permafrost. This is not about the pyramid. Um. um.
No, it's a weird thing. Like apparently when people had discovered it in rounds of this image that I had sent you had made the rounds on the internet. Apparently Google Maps had covered up images afterwards and the Wayback Machine was how they got the original copies of the photos. And like I said, there's been a couple of people that have went forward and testified that they were a part of a government project around this Black Pyramid. Like other people that I kind of have a little bit less skepticism for we're talking about underground bases in Alaska, but that just generally kind of makes sense. Like, it would do a lot less on the upkeep if you put a base below ground instead of out in the middle of the fucking taiga, you know?
I get that, but also I am skeptical.
I
Because you know
am
what
too.
else? You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of Dulce Base, which is another alleged super dangerous military installation that's underground and stuff. And I've talked about Dulce Base with you very extensively and how ridiculous I think it is. Um, and it's like so. Pardon me, but I'm gonna call I'm gonna call bull on this.
It's an interesting topic. Like I said, it's something that keeps getting brought up. When I've seen it so much when I was trying to research Mount Hayes, that like it came up all the time. If I just searched Mount Hayes, Alaska on YouTube, bro, it was in the top 10 at least. So the things that I do not want to discount actually is the UFO reports coming from both civilians and military
No.
personnel.
I will listen to UFO reports absolutely, especially military personnel UFO reports because there is a very large portion of reports that happen on military bases, especially ones out in the desert or in other remote regions such as this. Um, so that's something I will absolutely listen to because for whatever reason, paranormal phenomena, especially squatches, they love military bases. Can't get enough of them.
Well, like, I was sitting there thinking about that the other day, too. Like, I mean, a lot of military bases are placed out of the eye of the civilians, right? So they're
Yeah.
out in the middle of BFE nowhere 9 times out of 10. Okay?
Mm.
Like, a lot of these places are used as training facilities for different wilderness survival courses, Louisiana is used for jungle training.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, they utilize these regions that we have at our disposal to train our troops just the same. And sometimes that means finding and building a military base, I guess, way out in the middle of nowhere, you know? And at that point, they're not interested in the military base. They're more interested in who the fuck just moved into their neighborhood. You know, like, we're moving directly into their territory, if anything. Like, and then just humor me if there's this group of Bigfoot, they're like, damn, there's all these construction dudes and all this stuff coming up around, all these helicopters, all that kind of stuff. Of course they'd be curious, you know? And then to try and see what their intentions or motives were, you know? A lot of wildlife alone, like, let's not even get into the potential hominid theory. If it's just an animal, a lot of animals try to take stock of their neighbors to see what they're doing, to make sure that they're not a threat. So I'm not that skeptical about it. Like, apparently nuclear bases are nuclear facilities that are way out in the wilderness also get a lot of Bigfoot reports, and I think it's largely for the same reason. Like, they're over here like, maybe it's like in the radiation. I'm like, I don't know about that, okay, there, macho man. Like,
Yeah, no. I was listening to Wartime Stories recently, which is another favorite YouTube channel of mine, because it is a paranormal channel that is explicitly predicated on paranormal accounts by military servicemen. Uh, really cool channel, and they did an episode recently about military bases out in the desert and the kind of stuff that they see. And there actually is a Squatch in there that I do want to talk about at some point. So
need to bookmark where it is on the map, and then we'll do an episode on it once we kind
we
of
will
move
absolutely do
around.
some Bigfoot geography about it. Yes, sir.
I do love that. We can always, like, that's the best thing about this series here, is that we can always, as long as we got a spot on the map we can place, I bet we can find more than one Bigfoot report in the area.
I know for a fact this spot in particular is a hotbed. Like, it is. It had like people on patrol out there see it so often that like
They got a name
yeah
for him.
yeah they have a name for him. Yeah.
I love that. I fucking love that. Like, I wonder then if it, like, because there's the whole mimicry thing about Bigfoot. There's the rare report that it mimics human speech. Like, what if they're out there calling to it and it learns its name and starts calling it
Oof.
back? That'd be
Oh,
hilarious.
oh, God. Oh. Bigfoot mimicry, like, just makes my skin crawl because it's, it's in the uncanny valley. But, like, imagine, like, listen, I already get unsettled enough listening to the Sierra Sounds, right? I can't imagine being out in the woods and hearing that. That would scare the piss out of me.
Oh, dude, that'd be the worst thing. That's like that. It's the Bigfoot hominid thing, man. Like, what if these things are human for all intents and purposes? They just need to learn our language. That'd be the only kicker. You know what I mean? That's I think the core fundamental fear behind Bigfoot. It's because like we've conquered the whole known world as far as the biology of the world is concerned. You know, the human race. But what if there's something we don't know that's out there that can potentially be as smart as we are given the chance? I think that is truly what grips people when it comes to the fear of Bigfoot. Now, like, let's go ahead and round this out with a bonus story that we wanted to kind of go to. Because, like, we're up here in Alaska. It's only a short drive over to the Russian Federation, you know, even though me personally, as a Hungarian, not a big fan. However, we couldn't get away from this one. This is a really cool account that we'd seen. So let's go ahead and throw it in there.
I'm going to read this one as is. And this is going to make up the last part of our show for tonight.
Yeah. If you would just lead off with the name and the person and everything and when they submitted it.
I don't have...
I think it's at the bottom.
So, it was written by a Bill Lee from Boise, Idaho in early 2006. So, this is all in the voice of Bill, obviously. A quick background. Frank comes to see our band play all the time. We're good friends. He tells me about Vietnam and his hunting trips. I trust him. There's no telling what he knows, but he won't talk about things for reasons. So what follows is the text of his letter. Here goes. This fall, my ex-partners went back to Kamchatka. I did not go this time. I was tied up, not by a woman, unfortunately. I'll try to make this short. J.G. Wells, my partner and owner of the firm, shot a huge old boar brown bear. It was not quite as tall as my biggest Alaskan brown, minus 10.4.5 at 9'10", but was immensely blocky, hefty, and muscular. Pictures taken right before the shot as it looked like an M1A1 Abrams tank with dark brown fur, obviously the King of the Valley. I think it's really funny that he uses that, because you described the bear as an Abrams earlier in the episode.
These things are huge, dude. Like,
they're fucking big. They had tracked it on and off for 4 days and had come across an interesting sight. An area near a creek, choked with strawberry bushes that looked like it was the scene of an epic battle. It was rocky and gravelly, not so much in the way of tracks, but it looked like two bulldozers had gone at each other. Saplings up to 4 inches in diameter snapped like soda straws, bushes ripped up, scattered fur, etc. They presumed the boss had laid down the law about territory ownership to another bear. They were hot on his track and had to keep going as they did, until JG saw something curious. It was a large tree branch, 4.5 to 5 foot long, and about 5 to 6 inches in diameter at its big end, 4 feet or so at the smaller end. It obviously had been torn off a nearby tree. JG said he looked at it twice as they moved through the area because the big end had blood and fur on it. He just assumed at the time one of the bears had slammed into it while fighting. The next day when they caught up with the bear, he was bedded in a deep thicket. They circled and got into position at the edge of a small clearing just as the bear came out. He was moving very slowly and stiffly up the mountain. JG got him with 2 shots from his .416 Wrigley, nothing dramatic, but JG is a real hunter and insists on helping with the skinning. That's when they got an additional surprise. The bear was really beat up. Not fatally, but he was one sore, battered bear and has a very unusual wounds from a fight. When they rolled him over to skin him, there were big areas on his chest and stomach where the fur was pulled out in claw marks. JG said it looked like someone jumped on his back and had his arms around him, holding on it while bit. They thought at first a Siberian tiger, which would be one hell of a fight, a 1,400-pound bear and a 750-pound cat, but the marks were wrong. A tiger wouldn't pull fur out. It can't clench its paws into fists, and the claw marks were wide and shallow. They were spread wide apart between the air quotes fingers. If you hold your hand out and spread your fingers, they spread pretty far apart. Another bear is don't. Big brown bears, such as mine, have claws up to 4.5 to 5 inches long, but there are only 4 on the front paw. The 5th is a dew claw up our wrist joint ears. There were 5 of these, one in an opposable thumb position. The opposable thumb bit was underlined with pin, as noted by the author. In other words, marks that appear to come from a very large pair of hands, which was also underlined. What was just as weird was when the huge hide was up to the neck. There were several large bite marks on the bear's neck and shoulders. Curious thing is they were not as deep as you expect from a bear, and teeth marks were more rounded or molar-like. Most strangely, the whole bite mark was very horseshoe-shaped like this. There's a horseshoe-shaped drawing, whereas a bear's bite mark's much longer and narrow, like drawing of a narrow mark. Well, the long and short of it was one of the local guides gave the following account of what had happened. The other guides agreed and looked at the sign fairly closely at the sign before moving on. The boss bear come to the creek into the wind and surprised the female. They used their word for Bigfoot in his berry patch and attacked. The big male Bigfoot jumped from cover where he had been feeding. The guides say the big males are 9 foot tall and 750 to 800 pounds and immensely strong. Anyways, the fight was on, horrific but brief. The female did not join in, but fled with her youngster. As soon as the female was safely out of danger, the male followed. He had inflicted some pretty severe bites to the bear, but the massively strong bear had got him off his back. The bear, they say, had inflicted a severe bite to probably the male's thighs and several nasty off-balance paw swats. If his feet had been under pride, power, and leverage, the male Bigfoot would have been crushed. The local guides say such encounters are rare, but do happen when they surprise each other. True? Who knows, but my buddy of 40 years has been all over the world and taken several other bears. He has skinned hundreds of animals, and JG said those blue marks sure did not look like they came from another bear. The other weird thing was that he said the bear really stunk, especially on his back. Now, a bear in the wild, damp, soggy, mud, does not smell like latex and spring of freshly showered and powdered woman. Having carried quite a few bears out, I can best describe them as a musty old throw rug that's been laying on an earthen basement damp floor all winter. JG agreed but said this was different. He said the bear's back smelled foul, like whatever was cleaning there smelled bad, and possibly even urinated on the bear while fighting. He likened it to a cross between the weak old napalm water in Buffalo I hid behind in Nam for 3 days and the Wolverine scent stink we smelled in Alaska. That's the story. No proof of any kind, lots of interesting oddities. JG asked about tracking the family, but the guide said there wasn't enough money in the world to get them to do something as full as track a mad, wounded, protective Bigfoot. Besides, they said, late in the fall, they always went way back from the coast to several super nasty hellhole little canyons that have natural hot springs in winter there. An interesting footnote, JG called today and told me the following item. He had called over there to check a stash of large salmon they had caught and left there to be mounted. Outfitters told him after they left, season was over, and one guide rode one of the older Kawasaki snowmobiles back there to bring out some personal camp items left. He parked the snowmobile on the ridge above the fight scene after picking up the things he had come for. He decided to go down to the little river and catch a few salmon. There was not much snow on ridge, mostly ice, but much below, and he snowshoed down about half a mile and fished for about an hour. Caught 4 salmon and climbed back out to discover the snow machine was gone. It had been picked up and shoved down the other side of the ridge, and it weighed almost 500 pounds. Fortunately for him, as he was 20 miles back in, it hung up on a bush only about 20 feet down the ridge side. After some struggle fueled by a great desire to get the hell out of there, he got it back on its track, got started, and left with only a smashed windshield and cracked hood. A subtle way of saying, go the hell away and leave us alone for the winter. How about that?
Nuts. Like, I've heard of... You hear about that from hunter stories over here, like in the Rockies. I wouldn't say, like, a bear beat up to that level, but, like, people have shot, like, say, elk or whatever, and their elk get found in trees and weird shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that is nuts. The fact that, like, I wouldn't be, like... I've heard of some weird ones, too, where, like, they've either pushed cars off on the sides of the road or up out of the ditches on the side of the road or whatever. But a 500-pound snowmobile getting pushed, that's kind of rough. I would be shitting my pants.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, not to mention, like, if it bit hard enough to leave bite marks underneath the fur and on the skin of the animal, there got to be some bite force behind that shit. But, like, what is important there that, you know, dental stuff is really important to forensics and all that kind of stuff, like biology, taxonomy, all that kind of stuff. So, like, the fact that he was very, very clear that it was a horseshoe-shaped bite mark and not one that he knew would be more of a bear's bite mark is also really interesting.
Yeah. I'm just imagining this fight, dude. Like, that's crazy.
Dude, like, it's the one thing that, like, I know it would be one of the craziest, scariest moments, but I kind of wish somebody would catch some of that shit on video. Like, you'd probably get killed. You know what I mean?
I mean, like, if somebody ever managed to luck into filming an encounter like that, it would tell us so much about Squatch. just because, like, you know,
What are they capable of?
what are they capable of?
How do they truly show aggression versus like what we report of what we consider mostly bluff charge type behavior?
Yeah.
Why do
How
they
do they
fight?
how do they fight in the wild against actual enemies? That's so. Uh, so and like the transcript of the letter says, no proof, just the words of a hunter about something his guides had told him. Um,
Which those guys are out there, man. They're living that life. They're out there all the time. I wouldn't be surprised if they had seen something. Like a lot of the guys down here are people that live in like, my part of the woods, Kentucky, Indiana.
yeah,
You spend enough time out here, you got a story or two of some shit you can't explain.
yeah.
But with that, I think we need to get this campfire stoked. Break out some of this vodka we got out of Kamchatka on our way up here.
Yeah, and keep an eye on the ridge line. It's getting pretty dark.
Thankfully we sleep in the boat.
Maybe pull anchor from the shore and go sit in the middle of the river for the night.
That was the plan. I'd rather be out there in the bay than here on the shoreline. I at least wanted to get the campfire going so we can cook ourselves something.
Yeah, there you go.
Bigfoot can smell that bacon and be jealous, you know what I'm saying? For all I care.
Yeah. All right, well, that's it for us tonight on our episode of Bigfoot Geography. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Core Live After Hours. We'll come back to you next week with, you want to go with Northern Alaska or Southern Alaska?
Let's save the South for last, because I feel like that would lead us into some let's lead our way south a little bit.
Okay.
After that.
Okay, all right. So Northern Alaska is next week then. So yeah, join us next week. We'll talk about encounters in Northern Alaska and how Alaska gets even more troublesome up there because that's when you get into the Arctic Ring. And yeah.
We'll see you next week, guys. Thank you for tuning in.
Yeah.
Like, comment, and subscribe if you watched all the way to the end. That's going to help us on out.
Yep.
And y'all have a blessed night. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.